Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, along with my co-host, Ed Carbajal, and on a weekly basis, we plan to bring you the biggest news and interviews in the world of combat sports. Ed, how you doing, my man?
Tired already, waiting for you to start this thing.
I know we had some video issues with our guest, Fernando Gonzalez, so that will be added after our video here. But the good news is it was a weekend of absolute glorious victory for Fedor Emelianenko at Bellator 98. I got the sweater on, and
I
couldn't
hope
be
it.
happier.
I hope it itches you.
Couldn't be happier, brother. That's what MMA is all about, right there.
Real quick, just for the folks that because we had promised Fernando. I just got done talking to him, so I have the audio for that. We're gonna add it later, which Matt said. But he's fighting at ACB 87 May 19th. It's a 6-fight contract. He's really happy about it. He's really excited, and he's fighting a guy named Piotr Struss, Strus. 6-fight contract. So he's gonna travel out there fight week, but he's been training on their time while he's here, and he's ready to go. So look forward to that later in the podcast. But yeah. So obviously Matt is still drying himself off over his victory, Fedor's victory over
See, you already forgot. Frank Mir,
Yeah.
another UFC champion in the books for Fedor there.
I mean, not for nothing. He did have him in trouble for a little bit there before he turned it around. And you and I were messaging each other that night. That's one of the things that I actually forgot about Fedor and I started having the flashbacks with Kevin Randleman and what's the Japanese rockhead guy that he fought? That Fujita. You know, like the guys that always almost had him in trouble, and then out of nowhere. And you want to know what's funny? I'm trying to find a GIF of it too. Leading up to that fight, they showed Fedor warming up, and he was walking backwards, like he was doing like a switch with his hips, but he was going backwards, and then he was planting his foot and swinging, going backwards, throwing from the hip, like I had mentioned when we talked to Reyes. Like he likes to throw that shot right from his hip, almost to the point that he hides it, and the guy coming at him can't see it, so it can go high, it can go low. And it seemed like it gave Frank Mir a false sense of security with the advance because he had that little clip, and he caught him rushing forward, and he kind of did what he was doing in that little warm up video. So the guy's obviously got something that works. I mean, that walking backwards technique, whatever it is. I mean, it's not the first time I've seen him do it.
Well, I mean, being the smaller guy, I think he's had to backpedal a few times. Frank seemed to kind of fall into his game. You know, he grazed him with a punch, kind of dropped him. I don't know how bad Fedor was actually hurt, but I think Fedor or Mir just kind of fell in love with the idea of throwing punches. And when they finally got into a clinch, Fedor hip tossed him, and I think that might have thrown Mir off of his game a little bit too. Usually being the bigger, stronger man in there, other than when he's fighting somebody like Brock Lesnar.
Well, yeah, and it's hard to ignore once you land a shot and the chain for a combination you've been training opens up. It's hard to ignore finishing that chain up. You know what I mean? And like you just you're kind of, that's one thing about training on mitts and stuff. You fall in love with that little combo, and something like that weird left hook or left uppercut is like kind of half hook. Right on the chin that can shut down the whole thing. I mean, it's like they say, it's the shot you don't see that puts you out, and he obviously was advancing when he caught. He walked right into that.
Well, I watched a breakdown on it, and it was basically Fedor, was throwing threw a couple right hands that just missed, and it forced Frank kind of duck down to his right, and right when he did that, Fedor, basically took the opening and hit him with kind of a left hook uppercut, and right on the jaw, dropped him. So
I tell you what, they had trouble. It seemed like, I'm not saying they had trouble, but it looked like they had the pacing of the event because they had I forgot how long they had the broadcast schedule for, but all the fights before that finished. None of them went past the first round, right? Were they all first round
So
finishes,
the entire
submissions?
main card was first round, and then a lot of the,
Yeah.
a few of the prelims were even first round, but those are on a different timing schedule. But I think basically what the events try to do, and I know UFC does this, is basically one fight every 30 minutes. You kind of plan for that, and when there's that many quick finishes, it makes it tough for the fans watching at TV. It's especially tough if you're a fan in the crowd because on this event they even showed a prelim fight, which happened to be another quick first round finish.
Yeah, I saw
Um,
that. Yeah.
but in the arena you don't get that. So it's one of those things, I thought all the fights were, I thought they were all fun to watch. The night started off with Dylan Dennis making his MMA debut. I think he was a 6-time world BJJ champion, if that's correct. So, it was nice to see him get in there, and he uh, he took a couple shots. I was a little worried initially,
Yeah, that's
but
gonna. I mean, that might be a problem later. I mean, as the higher he climbs in the ranks, that might be a problem for him. I mean, because those were some good shots that he took. Obviously, he took them to get that leg lock in so he can get underneath the guy. But I mean, that's not always going to work. Like there's people. Once people start seeing how he fights or what he goes for, they'll try to figure out ways around it. I mean, there's people like how what they're going to do, and they're very good at it. Like Neiman Gracie did that night too. He still was able to get some sort of choke in. But he's just really good at pressure, and I mean he's very calm and strong when he gets his hands on you in grappling. He's actually doing a seminar here, I think on the 26th later this month. He's doing a seminar here in Old Bridge, New Jersey. I might try to get to it.
that'd be cool. I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously you're not going to be successful too much pulling guard. Um, he's going to want to keep his hands up, avoid the big shots. If he fights a lanky fighter, that could be interesting. If it's somebody that has a little bit of a longer reach, where it'll force Dennis, it'll be harder for him to get in on somebody. But you go in there, you really didn't suffer any damage. You got a toe hold victory, which is fairly rare in the world of MMA. So that was kind of cool to see. And he's got the charisma, I guess you would say. He kind of falls into the McGregor world of MMA, which I mean he's McGregor's jiu-jitsu coach, so I'm not always about that hype train of over the top antics, but it's always great to have a good jiu-jitsu player in there, go in there and prove it in the world of MMA.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean that's like going back to UFC one just to show that that's a solid piece of the fighting game that is required. But Rafael Lovato, I actually thought he was in trouble when he fought Gerald Harris. He did that jumping knee and he kind of like fell a little bit. I was concerned that was going to be bad for him, but he turned it around. I mean, once he started getting when he got his guard up and Harris in his guard, that armbar was super tight. I mean, you could tell that it was one of those ones he cranked. Harris wasn't, even though he tried to roll out of it. I mean, the fact that he couldn't control his other hand. Usually, once it's out here, once you can't do anything to it, it's a good idea to tap.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's impressive as hell. I think he went to 8-0 now. If I believe it's all finishes.
Yeah, all finishes. I mean, I'm pretty sure it is all finishes too. I know when he got to Bellator, I remember when he got to Bellator, it was funny because Jimmy Smith had commented on Twitter because Jimmy Smith was still there. Because like leading up to it, they were talking about his jujitsu prowess, and I was just like, oh yeah, this is going to be a submission, and he knocked out the first guy with a high kick, and then not so it's like people didn't get to see his jiu-jitsu, and now they're seeing it a lot, and that was definitely. And I feel bad though because like that was Harris's comeback from he fought in World Series of Fighting, and then I think he only took that fight on 4 days' notice too, right? That was that last minute replacement you talked about last week.
Yeah, late replacement for John Salter. So it's Lovato's the real deal. Look forward to seeing him advance, and like you said, Harris taking it on 4 days' notice is a tough fight when you have somebody that skilled across from you. But I also saw, I think he got a 4-fight deal out of it from Bellator, so that was good to see for a guy willing to take that fight and someone who has a real good reputation in the world of MMA. It's nice to see him get another contract and get a chance to pursue his career.
Yeah, man. I mean, that was like all my training partners were because I actually had dinner with them that night. We watched the fight after. So all my training partners were like in love with that fight card. That's probably the best one. I mean, all the jujitsu that was on display. Even what's this kid's name? Emmanuel Sanchez. Like, uh, I'm like, how did he? How did he? It's like he's under the radar. He's so good. I mean, that was such a cool finish, the standing head and arm choke, and then he took his opponent down and finished the choke there. I mean, that was like one of the best finishes of the night for.
Yeah, Emmanuel Sanchez beating Sam Cecilia, a UFC veteran. I think Sanchez is one of those guys that when people talk about MMA, and compare him to UFC, a lot of people say, well, Bellator doesn't have the depth, and they don't have the guys that can compete in the UFC at certain levels. I think he's one of the guys that would fall under the radar there. I think he could compete in the top level of the UFC, in any organization in the world, and I think he proved that.
But
You
I mean, the thing is too, like you got a lot of people that are promotional, like fanboys, and it's like if you like the sport, there's so much talent out there to see. Excuse me, like I saw a post today from Ali. I can't pronounce his full name. He's Justin Gaethje and Eddie Alvarez and all those guys' manager.
know.
Like he was just like he pointed out all the World Series of Fighting veterans that are now at the UFC, where people were saying, that they weren't really that good, and they're up there. I mean, Justin Gaethje's been fight of the night. I don't know how many times, and the same can be said for guys like Sanchez and then vice versa. Like I don't think anybody's had an easy fight coming from the UFC since this started. Nobody's had an easy fight coming in from the UFC to Bellator. Uh, like Henderson fought two champs, right? Didn't he fight?
Yeah, Korshkov and then Chandler.
Yeah, and he lost.
Mhm.
So you know,
Musashi. Musashi came in and his first fight against Alexander Shlemenko. I mean, a lot of people think he lost that fight,
yeah,
and he
I
won
was
a very
there for
close
that one.
decision there. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
the arena was very against the decision. I remember I was there for that one. That was a rough fight too.
the top of the weight classes in most of the divisions, I think, are really competitive. You got Pitbull, Patricio Pitbull. You put him at 145 in the UFC. I think he's a top, 5 to 7 fighter, no problem. I think he beats a lot of people. I don't know if he's a world champion or not, but that might have to do more with his fighting style of being so aggressive that he might leave himself open, kind of like a Justin Gaethje. But him and Carvalho and Musashi. If Musashi wins, I mean, he's without a doubt top 5 at 185 in the world, no matter what organization he's fighting in. Um, we talked about Lovato. He kind of makes himself the number one contender. I know that turned out to be a catch weight with Harris. I think it turned out to be a 188-pound catch weight, but he basically earned himself the number one contender spot for the 185 to fight the winner of Carvalho and Musashi coming up at Bellator 200 at the end of this month. Um, he definitely brings a tool bag that could be dangerous for both of those guys. Musashi's got great grappling, but him and Carvalho are both, I'd say their base is definitely striking.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that too. Although the one thing I would say for like I always found Musashi to have impressive grappling for a striker or someone that's known for his KO power. Um, but yeah, that's who else did we miss? We talked about Dennis. We talked about Sanchez,
You,
Lovato.
you mentioned Gracie, but he also won by head and arm choke. So
Isn't he 185 too? Gracie?
yes, yeah, Neiman Gracie's also 185, so he's right there too. I mean, there's a lot of good fights. So I'm saying the divisions are getting
You know
deep
what's
now.
you know what's weird at the press conference before the event, the final one that Wednesday that they did, he said he was going to call out somebody, but like where I was watching, I couldn't hear. Did he call out anybody when he won?
I don't recall. I
I
don't
don't. I
recall.
don't think that he did. I'm wondering if it was one of them that he was going to call out.
Yeah, I don't know. But I
It
mean,
was,
he's right there. He's historically he hasn't been real active, so I don't know. But I reading some stuff on him, it sounds like he really wants to start picking up his schedule a little bit. And if he
yeah,
does that, then I mean that's great for Bellator to have a Gracie in your organization. It's a name recognition, and the guy's a killer. I got some fight in New York for the Bellator New York card.
yeah. And he fought in Connecticut after that. I mean, he's been fairly busy, I think, but he he definitely said he wanted to call out somebody, and I don't think he did. But I mean, he's definitely like a threat to that division. I feel like if they come back around this way, because he trains out here, so I know he trains at Henzo's in New York. So maybe when they come out here again, or in this direction, whether it be Mohegan Sun or Turning Stone or one of those places, hopefully he's healthy and ready to go, and they get him another good fight.
So then, we started off talking about the main event with Fedor and Frank Mir and Fedor's victory. We're coming up on the King Mo Ryan Bader fight next Saturday night, May 12th.
Yeah.
How do the kind of the MMA world went crazy when they saw Chael Sonnen and Fedor facing off. I know I've said it on some past shows that there's not an MMA world that I live in where Chael Sonnen beats Fedor. What's your opinion on that?
I mean, I don't see. I honestly don't think. I don't think it's going to go well for him. For Sonnen, just because. So, and I like Chael Sonnen. Before I say why, because I mean I like him. I think he's a very cerebral fighter. I think his game plan, if he tries to, his game plan seems to be using his wrestling and his grappling. He's gotten better. He's a brown belt now in jiu-jitsu. And so he's gotten better with his chaining submissions and all this stuff. But it all comes off of him being able to put people on the ground, and Fedor's takedown defense is really good. And that's one thing. The other thing is when Chael fought Rampage, he complained about the power. When he fought he said how hard Rampage hit him, and it hurt him, winded him when he got them with that one body shot in particular. And then when he fought Wanderlei in New York, he looked like he got a little dazed by some of those shots too. So obviously, if Fedor's throwing them ass hip power bombs that he likes to throw, because I say ass and hip because he throws it from his ass and like puts his whole hip into it. Mm-hmm. I feel like if one of those lands on Chael, he might drop him with that too. So, I mean, like I said, I like Chael, but if I'm looking objectively at the fight, I see Fedor getting past him.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't. To me, the only way Sonnen wins is to lay on Fedor for 3 rounds, and I don't think he can hold him down for 3 rounds and without getting at least submitted. I don't think he can hold him down for 3 rounds, but even if he did, I don't think he'd be able to avoid a eventual submission if history is at all accurate in that fight. And I think Fedor's just going to land too big of a shot that'll curl him up eventually.
And the other thing is too, it's not like it's this Sonnen is the first good wrestler he's gone against. I mean, he's gone against good wrestlers before that have taken him down, and he's always scrambled his way out or scrambled his way into, like if you look at the Randleman, that's that iconic the suplex, and then he gets Kimura'd right after. So like his that's what Chael has to look out for and deal with. I don't know what's today's Tuesday. His first podcast. He'll probably talk about it tomorrow on his podcast, so I'm looking forward to hearing it. It'll be the first one after the event, after he did the face-off with Fedor.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun fight. I'm here in East Coast for that fight, so I'm curious to see what happens after next weekend if they announce the venue, and ideally they put both semifinals on the same show. I mean, the end of the year is going to start crunching down here if they keep it spread out too much. So we'll see. I mean, so far, Fedor got out of that fight unscathed, as did Sonnen and as did Mitrione. So I know they just announced that the Crow Cop, basically if Crow Cop beats Roy Nelson, he becomes the number 1 alternate, which opens up a ton of possibilities as well for some historic matchups.
Yeah. I mean, not for nothing, if Sonnen versus Fedor would be a nice main event for them to bring the promotion back to New York with.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking they'd do New York, and they'd have both of the semis on there. You bring back Danis, you bring back you can bring back Gracie even, being the local guy there, and that'd be the show. I don't know if they go back to MSG. I know MSG has a bunch of expensive fees and stuff there. I almost feel like Bellator fits better in the Barclays Center. I know that opens up the curse that you've talked about, um, but it kind of seems more of like a natural fit to me. But I'm always open for the MSG event.
I mean, it'd be nice for them to fill the Madison Square Garden arena, but I would prefer they go in the theater in Madison Square Garden over Barclays. I don't want them to. I mean, I know it's smaller and all that stuff, but I'm telling you, man. I mean, come on, look at the track record of anything even closely related to mixed martial arts that has happened in Barclays Center. It's got just a weird negative stigma from UFC 208 to McGregor Mayweather's portion of the tour that was there, and then obviously 223 that's still fresh in everyone's mind. He's still got to come back next month for his hearing for that. So McGregor. So I'm just like, I mean, those hipsters don't like MMA the way we like it. Not for nothing. Brooklyn is part of New York City, but Midtown Manhattan, that's where MMA is more popular.
Well, the theater's way too small, though, right? The theater only holds like 5,000, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, then maybe the tickets cost a little more. I don't know. I'd rather, like I said, I mean, if they go to Barclays, that's going to be such a problem for me.
Well, I mean, they said that their biggest gate of all time was the Bellator New York at MSG. So obviously they didn't have problems making money and selling tickets to the previous event. And if they load the card, it'll do fine. I just know that I've read at least that the fees to get into that building is pretty astronomical. So I'm not sure. I don't know where Bellator's at financially and stuff like that, but it's just something that had crossed my mind that that could be a change that is made. But
I mean, it's right down the street from Viacom. I feel like they should have friends down the street. You know what I mean?
I'm all good with the MSG. I'm going to make one trip out to New York this year. So whether it's that one or the UFC event later this year, I haven't quite made my mind up once everything gets announced officially. But it was a fun weekend, good fights, and we don't have a UFC or Bellator this weekend, but I know Friday night is Invicta 29, and that's Sarah Kaufman going for the vacant bantamweight title.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite nights of the year is Saturday night, early Sunday morning for you is Ryzen 10 with a main event of Horiguchi and Ian McCall. Can't get enough of the knees to the head and soccer kicks of
no, definitely. You can get that. That's actually, if folks want to order it, you can order it on Fight TV. We have the dedicated page at the blogboardjungle.com. There's a dedicated Fight TV page where you can download the app if you don't have it. So if you grab it, you help us out.
Yeah, and if anybody hasn't had the Fight TV app, the streams are seamless. I mean, it works great. I've watched all the Ryzen events up until this point. And several other events. So, I mean, it's a great app to have if you're a fight fan or a pro wrestling fan. It's loaded with stuff. So
yeah, I mean, I've watched Ryzen on there. The replay, I watched Ryzen. I've watched obviously the Karate Combat stuff that we talked about lately, and Fernando's ACB fight. ACB 87 will be on there. So that's like a nice middle of the day card. They're usually free too, so you don't even have to buy that. You just watch it as long as you have the app, you can watch it. So,
yep. So, well. Good talking to you again this week, Ed. Everybody should stay tuned for your interview with Fernando. I know he has a lot to say, and he's super excited to be fighting in Nottingham, England in a couple weeks. So,
yeah, no, I'll add that audio right after this. But yeah, it's good talking to you, man. I'm glad you changed your sweater while I was talking to Fernando and changed into your Fedor sweater. You don't look like you owe anybody any bobbleheads or anything either. You got what you wanted. So
nope, all bets have been cleared. Everything worked out, and the world of MMA is right once again. At least for the next few months, hopefully. But I just want to remind everybody also to follow us on Twitter at Combat Hour, myself at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram, and follow you, Ed, at Carbazal on Twitter. Thanks for the chat again, brother. And like I said, look forward to hearing your conversation with Fernando.
All right, cool, man. Thank you for listening. And folks on listening to the podcast version of this, that interview is coming up next. Thanks, everybody. Peace. All right, I'm talking with Fernando Gonzalez, who's fighting at ACB 87 this month, May 19th. Fernando, what's up, man? Sorry about the problems we've been having.
Nothing, man. Just dealing with this little thing, but damn phones, But no, man. No, I feel great. I've been training hard. I didn't really have too much time to train for this fight. About 6 to 5 weeks. Normally it's about 8 weeks, so I had to crunch a lot into a little bit of time. But I think I'm pretty much there. I mean, we've got 3 more weeks to go out and get the hand raised.
Where? So you're still in California right now. When do you head over to like the events overseas, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be. I believe the week of the fight is when we're gonna fly out. So I'm not. I won't give me too much time to get acclimated, but the timing wise, like I've always trained like around 9 o'clock. I train here at Dan Henderson's gym in Temecula. And he always fought overseas, so he always kind of kept that schedule where we train at 9 or 10 in the morning. So out there it'd be like 9 or 10 at night. It's like a 9-hour difference or something like that. So I'm always kind of prepared for that, and I'll be out there ready to go.
Oh, well, that's interesting. So you're training on their time while you're here, so that you don't have to. Well, that's pretty cool. That's smart, actually. I never thought about that. My next question was going to be, are you worried about the changeover in time? But you're kind of already on their time. That's pretty smart.
Yeah, that's kind of been the blessing of training at Team Quest and fought overseas. So all of pretty much my entire career has been training around this time, and that's why I would have to do 2-a-days. So when I would fight here in the States, I would have to be ready for nighttime. So I've been doing 2-a-days pretty much all my career.
All right, that's. You know what? I feel like I'm being stupid now for not thinking of that as a training method, because I always feel like one of the issues fighters have when they travel is always the time change. But training with someone like Dan Henderson, he would definitely know, with all the time he fought on the other side of the world. Is this your first time fighting overseas?
Yeah, this will be my first time fighting in Europe and stuff like that. I got a chance to fight in China. We did a kickboxing show out there, and that was a great time. I fought in the Philippines, or we went out to the Philippines to do they had a team thing going on for MMA, and I was on the alternate team. So I got to go out and enjoy some fights, and got paid $4,000 for that show, which was kind of cool. But yeah, it was a great time. Those are the only times I've been outside of a little bit further than Hawaii.
Oh wow! So what do you know? Your opponent is I don't even know how to pronounce his name. It's Piotr Struss. What do you know about him?
Piotr Struss.
Yeah, what do you know about him? Is he dangerous? He's a grappler. He's a striker.
He's well rounded. He's mostly a striker. He's a kickboxer with good ground. He's just a lot of. The thing is, he's got a lot of heart. A couple of the fights that I've seen, he gets gotten cracked, and the guys almost throw themselves out completely, and he knows how to stay in the fight. He's very, very game and very like a veteran. He has got a lot of veteranship in him. He knows what to do as far as striking goes. So I honestly just feel I'm a little bit more well-rounded in everything, and my speed will make the difference in the fight. My pace, I think, will make a big difference as well. So if I can keep that and stay away from his big power, I feel I should dominate this fight.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about your durability too, given your past performances and the level of competition you fought. Speaking of competition, like as far as fighting at ACB in the new promotion, this is your first fight there. Are there any jitters or being nervous, or are you worried about the competition there versus to where like you were fighting in Bellator? Is there any concern?
It anytime you're going to get some, especially with the weight, you know, these guys are a little bit heavier. I got to be more cautious that big power don't land. But the thing is, you know, I was the guy that didn't really have a name and had to build my name. So there's plenty of guys that are just like that on the outside, especially these guys who are Russian. You know, these guys are tough guys, man. They know how to fight and they enjoy fighting. So they pretty much grew up doing exactly that. So, you know, I just really underestimate anybody. I know I'm going to get tough fights, and if I can stay one step ahead of them, I'm gonna continue to do so. But you know, it's a fight. Anything can happen and anything can land. So I got to go out there smart and make sure that I'm the one who connects first.
So when you found yourself fighting for this promotion, was it did they come looking for you? I don't remember seeing. I feel like I remember seeing the announcement, but not any details on when you signed with them.
Yeah, the thing was, we were still under the 90-day hold with Bellator. So they got 90 days to counter any offers. So we were in the process of that. They did make the offer to us, and it was a great offer. So for me, it just, you know, I think things were just going a little south for me over with Bellator, and it was time to move on. I had a great run there, and I was ready to move on and try something else.
Oh, definitely. I mean, ACB seems to be, especially among hardcore fans, it seems to be popular, especially on the weekends. It's a nice like midday card when we watch it over here. So, they seem to be. Frank Mir's still calling the fights over there too, right?
Yeah, as far as I know, he's been the commentator for those fights, and he does a good job, man. He's been at it since WEC days, so
yeah,
he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, so with the because I know that your opponent, since he's been fighting there, he won his last 3 fights. I don't know, man. I just feel like, I mean, and he's a bit younger than you, isn't he?
He's a what?
Isn't he younger than you? I feel like he's a young guy.
Yeah, he's I believe he's 30, 31, something like that.
Yeah.
He's younger than me.
I mean, well, not that makes a difference, but because like I feel like on that side of the world, there's a lot of like stronger grapplers. So do you feel like I mean, like, are you working takedown defense? I mean, I would imagine it's good working with Dan Henderson.
Yeah, you know, and the thing was, I've gotten to train with some of the best in the world. You know, Tyrone Woodley, Mo Lawal, the Rochelle brothers, they've come through. And there's so many guys that are phenomenal wrestlers besides Dan that have been through this gym. You know, you get to find different looks. So I don't see it being much of a difference as far as takedowns. The only thing I can see is if they're hitting me with something like Khabib Nurmagomedov, you know.
Yeah.
That's how grappling, but it's not that I haven't seen it before. You know, I've built that, I've trained that for those. In case I ever run into that style opponent, I'll be ready for them. And you know, one of the things about those guys, if they're shooting in for a takedown, they're giving up that neck, and I'm going with my kid team.
Yeah, I mean, especially you had just said earlier when you were talking about the fight, you seem to have I would think with your experience, you have the edge in the striking. With most of your wins are by you have 9 KOs, right? So yeah, you have more KOs than submissions. So I would imagine they're probably not used to your type of power over there. But
you know, I think those guys are going to be they're used to the strikes. You know, I mean, I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be mostly who's going to have the strategy, who's going to have a good game plan. What I do see with these guys, they're really strong, but they fight real traditional, real basic jab cross. So it's like when you're able to start mixing up a little bit of combinations, and not all of them. I mean, the majority of them that are from what I've seen, you know. At least for me, the style of striking that I have, it makes it a little bit easier for me to try to land something or set something up. It's still easier said than done, you know what I mean? So I could go out to improve it. But, you know, I feel just as long as I've been doing this, if I can think and I know I can land it.
Yeah, and the other thing too, like I had just mentioned before, the quality of opponents you've had versus what I mean. I know they train very tough over there. I mean, it's almost like an untapped market that's only being tapped now. But I just think that maybe the experience versus the quality. I didn't look at his past. I know he won his last 3, but I don't know who he's fought versus. I mean, you even though you didn't win against Lawrence Larkin, I mean, it was a decision. But like the guys that you've fought, like Brendan Ward and Brandon Gertz, Carl Parisian. I mean, those guys are you know people that have fought at championship level before, and you've been in there with them. So I feel like it's an untapped market for those fighters there. But for you, it's kind of like a new test. No, it's like a refreshing part for your career.
Oh, you know, for me, I'm on it honestly just to be able to say that I'm still fighting and continuing my journey. And ACB was the one who offered it to me. You know, honestly, that gave me another kick in the ass and another jump start because you know you start to get down in the dumps a little bit. You eventually realize that you're going, I don't know if I'm going to get signed with somebody, but I mean the offer came in pretty quick. But at the same time, you know, it was like a 30 days wait because we knew that it was a 90-day hold. So in that time, your mind's playing tricks on you. You're like, shit, is this it? Do I got to get a job? Do I have to be full-time? But as soon as the offer was in, it gave me that feeling again. You know, I'm going to continue to pursue my career, and these guys are giving me the opportunity. So I'm a loyal guy, and I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to give them one hell of a fucking fight, one hell of a show. And I'm going to continue to do that until I'm not with them no more or until I retire.
That's great, man. That's good to hear too. How many fights do you have with them? Is it just the one, or do you have several?
No, I signed a 6-fight deal.
Oh, nice.
So at least for the next 2 years, I'll be doing some traveling and exploring the world, which is another big thing that I've been dying to do. So, you know, obviously MMA has given me the opportunity, and ACB is the one doing it for me. So I'm like I said, I'm a loyal guy, and I'm going to give them exactly what they paid for.
That's cool, man. I mean, I'm happy to hear that. 6 fights is a big deal. It's May 19th, ACB 87, and most folks around here, I mean, I know through the Fight TV app is where I watch ACB. Do you know of any other places where folks can watch?
You know, I do not. That's where I will watch it too, is Fight TV. So Fight app, FITE app, or Fight TV. Yeah, that's where you can find it as far as I know.
Yeah, we have at the website that the YouTube channel this interview's on. It's going to be we actually have a dedicated Fight TV page, so that we'll make sure we put the order information on there, and folks can download the app there at theblogboardjungle.com. That way, folks can see your fight. So May 19th, Fernando Gonzalez. I really can't. I don't want to mess up his name. Your opponent's name is Piotr Struss.
Piotr Struss, yeah.
Piotr Struss. All right.
Piotr Struss.
All right. So May 19th, ACB 87. You can watch it on Fight TV here. And you got any shout outs you want to give to your sponsors or anybody?
Yeah, so I want to give a special thanks to Feedback, who's my recovery, basically my pod, like a spacecraft. So Feedback, SoCal Fresh Prep, my meal prep guys, and Dr. Toy Chiropractic. So these are the guys that keep me healthy and keep me in the gym day in and day out. So thank you to those guys, and obviously my teammate, Isaiah Alvarado, Tom Pelicchio, my brother Tristan Hernandez, and yeah, these are the guys who've been with me since the beginning, man. So I want to always give them a big thanks, and and obviously the guys also in the room. So Harry Sokajud, Sam Pompey, Chris Curtis, freaking oh my bad, Alex Thompson. These are the guys freaking shit. Well, these are Jared Bandera. He's a heavyweight. So right now, these guys are the ones that are putting the weight on me right now.
Nice.
And helping me get ready for Peter. So, you know, he's big, but I don't think she's gonna be as big or as quick as the guys that I'm going up against right now. So it's up to me to just go out there and make sure that I land my shot, and I'll get this win.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to it, man. You actually got me excited. The way hearing you talk about it got me excited. So yeah, man, I'm happy for you. That's really good news. So I mean, as far as you said, you're gonna leave that week. Just stay healthy, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk. Again, I apologize for the Google Hangout nonsense not working for you. It would have been nice to get Matt in on this, but but this will still make it on the podcast, the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. It'll be uploaded tonight, and we'll tag you in everything tomorrow. Just real quick, your Twitter is at ManyFeManiac. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
MEN.
That's my hometown.
Oh, all right, cool. Well, listen, man. Thank you again for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate it. I'm happy for you, man. This sounds like a big deal. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, bro. And yeah, anytime you guys want me, man, hopefully we get dial that in and get that fixed up. It's not your fault. I'm just punching out my phone over here.
Nah, man, don't worry about it. I mean, technology is a bitch, so I wouldn't sweat it. So, all right, man. Thank you.
I'm getting better at it. No problem, man. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
All right, bye.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.